Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship Meridian and watched the stars fade into darkness ahead. They were flying through the void between, a place where space itself seemed tired and old. The instruments made strange noises here, and time moved differently. His crew had been exploring this dead region for 3 weeks now and found nothing but empty space and broken rocks. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been flying ships for 20 years and had seen many strange things, but the void between made him feel small and worried. His second officer, Kate Williams, sat at her station checking the long-range scanners. She was young with bright red hair and always smiled. But even she looked nervous in this place. Dr. Lisa Campbell walked onto the bridge carrying her data pad. She was the ship's expert on old alien things and had requested this mission. Lisa had black hair and wore thick glasses that made her look smart and determined. She studied the readings on her screen and frowned. "Captain, I am reading something. Big out there," she said, pointing ahead into the darkness. "It does not match anything in our databases." Jake leaned forward in his chair. After weeks of finding nothing, any discovery would be welcome. "How big are we talking about, Doctor?" Lisa checked her numbers again. "At least 2 kilometers long, maybe more. The shape is wrong, though. It keeps changing on the scanners like the ship is alive somehow." Kate looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Captain, I am getting no response to our signals." "Whatever it has been dead for a very long time." Jake made his decision quickly. "Ben, get your security team ready. We are going aboard that thing." Ben Parker was head of security, a big, strong man who never smiled but always did his job well. He nodded and left the bridge to prepare his weapons and equipment. The Meridian moved closer to the strange ship, and Jake got his first good look at it through the main window. The alien vessel was huge and covered in what looked like gray metal that moved and shifted like skin. Strange lights pulsed along its sides in patterns that hurt to watch directly. The ship had no clear beginning or end, just flowing curves that seemed to fold back on themselves. Dr. Alan Foster joined them on the bridge. He was the ship's doctor and scientist, an older man with white hair who knew more about alien biology than anyone else in the fleet. He stared at the ship with fascination and worry. "That material," he said softly, "it reads as both living tissue and advanced metal alloy. How is that possible?" Jake did not have an answer. Nothing in his training had prepared him for something like this. The ship defied every rule of engineering he knew. As they got closer, he could see openings in the hull that looked like doors or maybe wounds that had healed badly. Sam Taylor, the youngest member of the crew, worked at the engineering station. She was only 22 years old with short blonde hair and quick hands that could fix anything on the ship. She looked scared as she read her instruments. "Captain," she said in a shaking voice, "the ship is giving off some kind of energy field. It feels like it is trying to talk to me, but not with words." Jake felt a chill run down his back. In all his years of space travel, he had never heard an engineer say something like that. He ordered Kate to move the Meridian to a safe distance, while Ben prepared the boarding party. Ben returned with his team equipped with heavy weapons and scanning equipment. He looked grim as he reported to Jake. "Sir, we are ready to go aboard. Dr. Campbell and Dr. Foster want to come with us to study whatever we find in there." Jake nodded. This was why they had come to the void between, to discover new things and learn about the ancient races that had lived in the galaxy before humans arrived. Even if this ship scared him, they had to investigate. The boarding shuttle separated from the Meridian and flew toward one of the openings in the alien hull. As they got closer, the opening seemed to expand like an eye-opening to look at them. Ben gripped his weapon tighter while Lisa took readings with her scanner. They landed inside a vast chamber that stretched further than their lights could reach. The walls were covered with thousands of crystal formations that glowed with soft blue light. Each crystal was different, some as small as a person's hand while others were as tall as trees. The patterns inside the crystals moved and shifted like trapped lightning. Ben led the way with his weapon, ready while Lisa and Alan followed behind taking measurements. The air inside the ship felt thick and old, like breathing in a tomb that had been sealed for centuries. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the huge space dot as they walked deeper into the ship. They passed halls filled with more crystal formations. Each one pulsed with its own rhythm, and the patterns inside seemed to respond to their presence. Lisa tried to scan one of the smaller crystals, but her equipment gave readings that made no sense. "These crystals are not just decorations," she whispered. "They are storing information, vast amounts of data compressed into crystalline matrices. But the encoding is unlike anything I have ever seen." They reached the center of the ship and found a circular chamber with two figures frozen in the middle. One was humanoid, wearing robes that seemed to be made of starlight itself. The figure held a sphere that hurt to look at directly, its surface, showing geometries that should not exist. The other figure was enormous and clearly not human. Alan studied the larger figure with his scanner and gasped. "Jake, this is a dragon. I mean a real dragon, but impossibly old and large. It measures as both alive and dead at the same time." The humanoid figure looked almost human, but Lisa's genetic scanner showed results that made her hands shake. "Captain, this being has human DNA, but it has been changed by technologies we cannot understand. He has been here for thousands of years." Between the two frozen figures floated a small device that began to glow as they approached. Words appeared in the air above it in every language at once, including English. The message was clear and terrifying. "The covenant of forgetting must not be broken." Jake stared at the message and felt something change inside him. Whatever they had found here was important beyond anything he could imagine. The dragon and the robed figure seemed to be waiting for something, and he had the terrible feeling that they had been waiting for humans to find them. Sam touched one of the nearby crystals before anyone could stop her and suddenly screamed. Her eyes rolled back and she began to speak in voices not her own, telling of civilizations that rose and fell, of species that reached for the stars only to have their memories erased, and of a cycle of forgetting that had trapped the galaxy in darkness for millions of years. When she finally collapsed, Jake caught her and saw that her eyes now glowed with the same blue light as the crystals. Whatever they had awakened, there was no going back. Sam Taylor lay unconscious in the medical bay of the Meridian while Dr. Foster ran every test he could think of. Her vital signs were stable but wrong somehow, as if her body was running on different rules now. Jake stood beside her bed watching. The strange blue glow fade and return in her eyes like a slow heartbeat. Back on the alien ship, Lisa Campbell worked carefully to revive the robed figure. She had connected her medical equipment to the stasis field that kept him frozen and was slowly bringing him back to consciousness. The process was dangerous because they did not know what kind of life support the being needed after so many centuries. Ben Parker stood guard with his weapons ready. The dragon had not moved since they arrived, but something about it made him nervous. The massive creature was beautiful and terrible at the same time, with scales that reflected stars that no longer existed. Every few minutes its great chest would rise and fall once, proving it was somehow still alive. Kate Williams monitored the ship's communications from the Meridian. She had been trying to contact Earth to report their discovery, but the signals would not leave the void between. It was as if this region of space was cut off from the rest of the galaxy by invisible walls. The robed figure's eyes opened slowly, and Jake saw that they were completely black with tiny points of light floating inside them like distant stars. The being looked around the chamber with confusion and then focused on Jake's face. When it spoke, the voice was human but ancient and tired. "You are from Earth," the figure said in perfect English. "I can see it in your genetics and your thoughts. How long has it been since I fell asleep?" Jake stepped closer carefully. "We do not know how long you have been here. Can you tell us who you are?" The robed figure sat up slowly, and Jake could see that underneath the strange clothes, the being looked human except for the star-filled eyes. "My name is Marcus Red. I was born on Earth in the year 2157, though I suspect that means nothing to you now. The Archive chose me to become a keeper, to break the cycle that has trapped us all." Lisa looked up from her scanner readings with excitement. "Your DNA confirms human ancestry, but it has been changed by technologies we cannot identify. What is this archive you mentioned? Marcus looked at the sphere he still held in his hands. The impossible geometries on its surface shifted and moved, like living things. The archive is the memory of the universe itself. It chose me to carry the memory core to Vorthak the Eternal and restore what was taken from him. He pointed at the huge dragon with one shaking hand. Vorthak was once the guardian of galactic memory, the keeper of all knowledge and history, but the covenant of forgetting bound him to forget his own purpose. Without his memories, the galaxy has been trapped in an endless cycle of amnesia. Jake felt a chill as he began to understand. What is the covenant of forgetting? Marcus struggled to his feet and walked slowly toward the dragon. An ancient agreement between cosmic forces that prevents any species from growing too powerful, or learning too much. When civilizations reach a certain level of advancement, memory waves sweep across their worlds and erase everything they have achieved. Technologies, culture, history, even love stories between individuals. All wiped clean, so they must start over from the beginning. Dr. Foster's voice crackled through the communicator. Captain, you need to see what is happening to Sam, her brain. Patterns are showing activity we have never recorded in humans before. Jake left Ben to guard Marcus and returned to the Meridian. In the medical bay, Sam was sitting up in bed with her eyes wide open and glowing bright blue. She turned to look at Jake, and he saw that something vast and ancient was looking back at him through her gaze. I remember, she said in a voice that echoed strangely. I remember the builders who created cities that floated in hyperspace. I remember the singers whose music could heal broken planets. I remember the dancers who could step between dimensions. All of them reached too high and were forced to forget. Dr. Foster showed Jake the brain scans on his screen. Her neural activity is off the charts. It is like she is accessing information stored somewhere else, downloading memories from an external source. Sam turned to face them, and Jake saw tears running down her cheeks. Captain, they are all gone. Thousands of civilizations that could have reached the stars, reduced to primitive tribes who forgot they ever dreamed of flying. The Covenant keeps the galaxy young by making everyone forget how to grow old. Jake felt anger building in his chest. The idea that some cosmic force was deliberately keeping intelligent species from advancing filled him with human stubborn rage. How do we stop it? Before Sam could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Kate's voice came over the intercom sounding scared. Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching from deep space. They do not match any known ship designs. And they are not responding to communications. Jake ran to the bridge and saw Kate pointing at the scanner display. Dark ships were emerging from the void between, shaped like pieces of broken space that hurt to look at directly. They moved in perfect formation toward the Meridian and the alien vessel. Those are erasers, Sam said as she walked onto the bridge. The blue glow in her eyes was brighter now, and Jake could see knowledge there that no human should possess. They serve the Covenant by wiping clean any traces of Forbidden's knowledge. They have come to destroy us and everything we have learned? Ben's voice crackled through the communicator from the alien ship. Captain, Marcus says we are in serious trouble. These eraser ships can drain memories directly from living beings. Most species cannot resist them at all. Jake gripped the arms of his captain's chair and made a decision that would echo through history. All hands, prepare for battle. Kate, send a message to Earth on all frequencies. Tell them what we have found here and warn them about the Covenant. The first eraser ship fired a beam of pure darkness at the Meridian. The beam struck their shields, and Jake felt something trying to crawl into his mind, searching for memories to steal. But instead of surrendering his thoughts, Jake held onto them tighter. He remembered his first day as a ship captain, his pride in commanding the Meridian, and his love for his crew. To his amazement, the memory drain stopped. The beam flickered and died as if it could not find purchase in his mind. Around the bridge, his crew was fighting the same battle. Kate held on to memories of her family on Earth. Dr. Foster remembered the day he graduated medical school. Even Sam, with her head full of alien knowledge, gripped her human memories like precious treasures. Impossible, Marcus Reed's voice came through the communicator. No species has ever resisted the eraser's memory drain. How are you doing this? Jake smiled grimly as he ordered his weapons to fire back at the enemy ships. We are human, Marcus. We are too stubborn to forget anything, especially when someone tells us we have to. The battle was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. The eraser ships fired weapons that tried to make his crew forget how to operate their stations. Beams of pure amnesia swept across the Meridian's hull, attempting to erase the ship's computer memory and navigation systems. But every time the alien weapon struck, Jake's crew refused to let go of what they knew. Ben Parker fought his way back to the Meridian, through corridors that the erasers were trying to make him forget existed. Lisa Campbell documented everything she could about the alien technology while memory wipes swept over her again and again. Each time she lost some piece of information, her human brain stubbornly reconstructed it from fragments and context clues. As the battle raged, Marcus Reed began the process of awakening Vorthik the Eternal. Captain Morrison, he called over. The communication system. Your species may be the key we have been waiting for. Humans seem to be immune to forced forgetting. If that is true, then you can help me break the covenant once and for all. Jake watched another wave of eraser ships approach through the darkness and felt something change in his heart. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe and what their purpose might be among the stars. Now he knew. They were the species that refused to forget, the ones who would remember what others were forced to lose. Marcus, he said into the communicator, tell us what we need to do. The process of awakening Vorthik the Eternal began in the heart of the ancient ship while the battle raged outside. Marcus Reed placed the memory core against the dragon's massive forehead, and Jake could see energy flowing between them like liquid lightning. The sphere's impossible geometries began to unfold and expand, revealing layers of compressed reality that made his eyes water to watch. Dr. Foster worked quickly to establish a neural bridge between Marcus and the memory core, while Kate Williams tried to create communication links with the sleeping dragon. The equipment they were using was human technology pushed far beyond its design limits, held together by determination and hope more than proper engineering. As Marcus began channeling the orb's power, memories from dead civilizations flooded through his consciousness into Vorthok's mind. The dragon's scales began to glow with inner light, and Jake could feel psychic energy building in the air around them. The walls of the chamber started to vibrate, and strange harmonics filled the space with music that spoke directly to the soul. Ben Parker led the defense against increasingly desperate attacks by the Covenant's forces. The erasers had been joined by other entities that Jake's mind refused to fully process. There were beings made of living silence that tried to erase sounds and words from existence, and creatures of pure negation that attempted to make concepts themselves disappear from reality. During these battles, Jake's crew discovered something remarkable about humanity. Not only could they resist memory erasure, but they could actually learn from attacks that should have left them mindless. When a silence bringer tried to steal the concept of weapon from Ben's mind, he simply reinvented the idea using different words and kept fighting. When Kate faced an entity that erased the notion of communication, she began using hand signals and managed to coordinate the ship's defenses. Sam Taylor had become something more than human during her contact with the Crystal Matrix. She could feel Vorthok's memories awakening like a vast library being opened after centuries of darkness. Through her connection to the archive, she began to understand the true scope of what they were fighting against. "Captain," she said as her eyes blazed with blue fire, "the Covenant was not created to maintain cosmic balance. It was established by something called the Null Conscience, a parasitic intelligence that feeds on the creative potential of entire civilizations." Jake ducked as another wave of memory-erasing energy swept over the bridge. His crew held on to their identities through sheer stubborn will while the ship's computer systems flickered and fought to maintain their programming. What does this null conscience want? Sam gripped the arms of her chair as alien knowledge flooded through her mind. It feeds on the energy released when civilizations are forced to restart their development. Every time a species loses its history and has to begin again, the null conscience harvests the creative force of their potential. It has been doing this for millions of years across thousands of galaxies. Vorthak's awakening sent psychic shockwaves across space that reached far beyond the void between. On dead worlds throughout the galaxy, ancient ruins began to pulse with recovered energy as their builders' memories returned to them. Dormant artifacts that had been silent for eons suddenly activated and began broadcasting messages in languages that had been forgotten before humans evolved on Earth. The dragon's eyes opened for the first time in millennia, and Jake felt the weight of cosmic intelligence focusing on him. When Vorthak spoke, his voice resonated through dimensions that human ears were not designed to hear, but somehow Jake understood every word. "Young species from the third world of a yellow star," the dragon said, "you have done something that was deemed impossible. You have remembered what the universe was commanded to forget." Marcus Reed collapsed as the final memories flowed from the memory core into Vorthak's consciousness. The sphere in his hands had become transparent, its purpose fulfilled after centuries of waiting. Jake could see that Marcus was dying, his human body finally giving up after being stretched beyond its limits by cosmic forces. Lisa Campbell worked desperately to save Marcus while Vorthak's memories continued to restore themselves. The dragon began to share what he remembered with the human crew, downloading information directly into their minds about other memory keepers scattered across the galaxy. These were beings who had maintained fragments of Forbidden's knowledge, despite the Covenant's efforts to erase them. "The Archive chose your species for a specific purpose," Vorthak told Jake as reality storms raged outside their ship. "Humanity was designed as a weapon against the Covenant, bred over millennia for your unique combination of adaptability, stubbornness, and the dangerous ability to love your memories more than your safety." Dr. Foster looked up from Marcus's failing body, with tears in his eyes. "He is asking for someone to take his place as the bridge between human consciousness and the Archive. The neural pathways he created are collapsing, and without a replacement, we will lose everything we have gained." Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him. Someone would have to sacrifice their individual humanity to become a living conduit for cosmic knowledge. It was a burden that would change whoever accepted it forever, transforming them into something between human and Archive. Before Jake could volunteer, Sam Taylor stood up and walked toward Marcus. The blue glow in her eyes had become a steady flame, and Jake could see that she had already been changed by her contact with the crystal matrix. "I am already partially connected to the Archive," she said quietly. "Let me complete the transformation." "Sam, you do not understand what you are asking," Jake said, grabbing her arm. "Marcus has been doing this for centuries, and it is killing him. You are only 22 years old." Sam smiled, and Jake saw both human warmth and cosmic wisdom in her expression. "Captain, the process should kill me, you are right. But my human nature allows me to survive by doing something the Archive never expected. I can compartmentalize impossible experiences and separate the parts of my mind that need to stay human from the parts that can handle infinite knowledge." The transformation began immediately. Sam placed her hands on Marcus's chest, and Jake watched as streams of energy flowed between them. Marcus smiled peacefully as his burden passed to younger shoulders and his ancient eyes finally closed in the rest. He had earned. Sam screamed as cosmic memories flooded into her consciousness, but she did not break. Instead, she began to organize the infinite information into human-sized pieces that her mind could process safely. She became the first successful human Archive hybrid, gaining access to galactic history while remaining fundamentally and stubbornly human. The change in Sam triggered a response throughout the galaxy. Every human in space suddenly felt a moment of dizziness as fragments of universal memory became accessible to their minds. It was not enough to drive them insane, but it was enough to make them aware that there was more to existence than they had ever imagined. Vorthak rose to his full magnificent height, and Jake could see that the dragon was no longer bound by the covenant of forgetting. His scales reflected not dead stars but living galaxies full of possibilities. The ancient guardian of memory had returned to his true purpose, and the universe trembled at the implications. "The war begins now," Vorthik announced as his voice echoed across dimensions. "The null conscience knows that its feeding cycle has been broken, and it will send everything it has to restore the Covenant. But for the first time in cosmic history, there is a species that can fight back effectively." Jake looked at his transformed crew and felt pride swelling in his chest. Sam stood beside him with eyes full of starlight, her mind connected to the archive but her heart still purely human. His other crew members had been changed by their battles with the Covenant's forces, developing abilities that should not exist in baseline humans. The battle outside had paused as the Covenant's forces regrouped for a final assault. Jake knew that what happened next would determine the fate of every thinking species in the galaxy. Humanity had been given the role of universal memory keepers, and they would not let the cosmos down. "All stations, prepare for the fight of our lives," Jake announced to his crew. "We are about to show the universe what happens when humans refuse to forget." The war for memory began when Vorthak started broadcasting suppressed memories across the galaxy from the heart of the ancient ship. Jake watched through the Meridian sensors as entire star systems suddenly blazed with new energy. Dead worlds that had been silent for millions of years began transmitting signals in languages that the Covenant had tried to erase forever. Within days, ships from dozens of species began arriving in the void between. The Zephyrians came first in vessels that bent space around themselves like water, their crews remembering techniques for dimensional engineering that had been stolen from them eons ago. Behind them came the crystalline communes, beings of living mineral who had rediscovered their ability to encode consciousness directly into matter. Jake found himself commanding not just the Meridian but a growing fleet of vessels from species who were recovering their lost histories. Each ship brought new technologies and forgotten sciences, but also desperate refugees fleeing the Covenant's response to the Great Remembering. The enemy was not taking the restoration of memory quietly. Dr. Campbell had transformed during the early battles into something Jake barely recognized. She now served as humanity's first lore warden. Her mind expanded to catalog and protect the recovered knowledge flowing in from across the galaxy. She had developed techniques for sharing dangerous information safely and created mental shields that could protect consciousness from the null conscience's influence. Lisa worked day and night to establish protocols for handling the flood of returning memories. Some knowledge was too dangerous to release broadly, while other information needed to be spread quickly before the Covenant could suppress it again. She had become the bridge between human understanding and cosmic wisdom, translating impossible concepts into forms that baseline humans could grasp. The enemy had adapted their tactics as well. The null conscience revealed new weapons designed specifically to counter humanity's memory resistance. They deployed devices called nostalgia bombs that created false memories so beautiful and perfect that consciousness became trapped trying to experience them forever. Jake lost 3 crew members to recursive memory loops before Lisa developed countermeasures. Ben Parker had evolved into something beyond a simple security chief. He now led humanity's contribution to the galactic resistance, a force called the Memory Guard composed of soldiers who fought using weapons and tactics that should not exist. Their equipment was powered by human emotion, particularly the bittersweet pain of remembering lost loved ones, which proved toxic to the Covenant's forces. The Memory Guard fought battles across dimensions that human physics could not explain. They used weapons that fired concentrated nostalgia, armor that was strengthened by childhood memories, and tactics based on the human ability to hold contradictory emotions simultaneously. Ben's soldiers could mourn fallen comrades while celebrating victory, creating psychological combinations that confused and damaged entities from the null conscience. Kate Williams had become the communication hub for the growing resistance. Her equipment now allowed her to speak directly with beings whose thoughts operated on completely different principles than human consciousness. She could translate emotions into mathematics, convert sounds into colors, and bridge the gap between species whose very concepts of existence were incompatible. Through Kate's translation network, The Resistance learned the true scope of their enemy. The null conscience was not just an entity, but a universe-spanning infection that existed in the spaces between thoughts. It had servants throughout the galaxy, including beings who had been erased so thoroughly that they existed only as living weapons with no memory of what they had once been. Sam Taylor had become something unprecedented in galactic history. As the bridge between human consciousness and the cosmic archive, she could access any piece of knowledge that had ever existed while maintaining her essential humanity. But the strain was enormous, and Jake watched her struggle to remain herself as infinite information flowed through her mind. "Captain," Sam said during one of her lucid moments, "I can see the pattern now. The Covenant has not just been erasing memories randomly. It has been specifically targeting species that showed potential to break free from the cycle. Humanity was hidden from them until now because Earth was in a region they had already harvested." Jake felt a chill as he understood the implications. "They deliberately kept us isolated until we were ready to serve our purpose." Sam nodded, her eyes blazing with archive fire. "The universe itself is dying because the Covenant has prevented it from growing and evolving. The constant memory wipes have created cosmic stagnation that is slowly draining reality of its creative potential. Only by breaking the cycle completely can the universe resume its natural development." The war escalated when the Covenant revealed its ultimate weapon, the Forgetting Fleet. These were ships that phased in and out of existence, crewed by beings who had been erased so thoroughly that they could not be detected by normal sensors. The fleet could arrive anywhere in the galaxy instantly and erase entire solar systems from memory, making it as if they had never existed at all. Jake faced his greatest test when the Forgetting Fleet targeted Earth itself. The warning came from Vorthok, whose expanded consciousness could perceive threats across galactic distances. Jake had minutes to decide whether to abandon the growing resistance to save his home world or trust that Earth could defend itself with the knowledge humanity had already gained. He chose to trust his own species. Jake broadcast everything the Resistance had learned about fighting memory erasure directly to Earth's defense networks. Within hours, human military forces across the solar system were adapting their tactics to fight enemies that existed between thoughts and wielded weapons made of pure amnesia. The Battle of the Null Archive became the turning point of the war. Jake led a combined fleet of Resistance vessels into the conceptual realm where the Null Conscience maintained its primary processing center. This was not a place that existed in normal space, but rather in the gaps between reality where thought became matter and memory shaped the laws of physics. Fighting in the conceptual realm required tactics that violated everything Jake understood about combat. His ships fired weapons powered by collective nostalgia while dodging attacks made of pure forgetfulness. The enemy tried to erase the concept of resistance itself from their minds, but the human crew simply reinvented rebellion using different words and concepts. Marcus Reed made his final sacrifice during this battle. His consciousness, freed from his dying physical form, became a permanent bridge between human awareness and the cosmic archive. His transformation allowed every human in the galaxy to access fragments of universal memory, turning his entire species into living libraries of impossible knowledge. The change was immediate and dramatic. Human colonies throughout space suddenly found themselves able to understand alien technologies that had been incomprehensible moments before. Human scientists began making discoveries that advanced their civilization by centuries in mere hours. Human artists created works that resonated across dimensional barriers and spoke to species with completely different sensory systems, but most importantly, humans retained their essential human nature despite their expanded awareness. They still loved, feared, hoped, and dreamed in ways that were purely human. This combination of cosmic knowledge and human emotion created a resonance that the null conscience could not counter or absorb. Jake watched from the bridge of the meridian as the tide of battle turned throughout the galaxy. Species that had been suppressed for millions of years began to remember not just their technologies but their dreams. The crystalline communes recalled their songs that could heal broken worlds. The void swimmers remembered their techniques for traveling between Galactic clusters. The nomadic star dancers rediscovered their ability to navigate through dimensions of pure possibility. Each recovered memory weakened the null conscience's hold on reality. The parasitic entity had grown fat and lazy, feeding on the same civilizations repeatedly for eons. It was not prepared to face resistance from species that remembered how to fight back and were supported by humans who refused to forget anything important. The war reached its climax when Dr. Foster made a startling discovery about the nature of their enemy. The null conscience was not an invader from outside the universe, but rather the cosmos' own immune system gone malignant. It had originally been created to prevent reality from being damaged by species that advanced too quickly, but eons of operation had corrupted its purpose. "Captain," Foster reported with excitement in his voice, "the null conscience can be healed, rather than destroyed. If we can restore its original programming, it could serve creation instead of suppressing it." Jake realized that the final battle would not be fought with weapons, but with memory itself. They would have to help the universe remember what it was meant to become. The final battle took place not among the stars, but in the realm of pure thought, where the null conscience had its true existence. Jake Morrison, now serving as humanity's first archive admiral, led a combined fleet of consciousness itself into the spaces between reality where memory became substance and dreams took physical form. The human strategy relied on their species' greatest strength, the ability to hold contradictory truths at the same time without breaking. Where other species had to choose between accepting cosmic law or transcending physical existence, humans embraced the paradox of being both limited and unlimited, mortal and eternal, individual and collective consciousness. Jake found himself standing on a bridge made of crystallized thoughts while his crew operated stations that existed as pure concepts given form. Sam Taylor stood beside him, her consciousness now permanently merged with the archive, but her human heart still beating with stubborn determination. Through her connection, Jake could perceive the null conscience as it truly was. The entity was vast beyond comprehension, a web of corrupted programming that stretched across multiple dimensions. But at its core, Jake could see something that looked almost familiar. The original purpose of the null conscience had been to protect the universe from chaos, to ensure that reality remained stable as countless species evolved and advanced. Vorthok's voice resonated through the conceptual space around them, carrying memories from the universe's earliest days. "Behold the truth that has been hidden for eons. The null conscience was created by the first civilization to achieve true cosmic awareness. They saw that uncontrolled advancement could tear reality apart, so they built a guardian to maintain balance." Lisa Campbell, now existing as pure intellect enhanced by human curiosity, analyzed the entity's structure with tools made of crystallized logic. "Captain, the corruption began when the null conscience started interpreting balance as stagnation. Instead of allowing controlled growth, it began preventing all advancement beyond arbitrary limits." Jake could feel the null conscience's attention focusing on their small fleet of human consciousness. The entity's response was not anger but confusion. It could not understand how beings so clearly limited and mortal could resist its influence so completely. Every attempt to erase their memories only made them more determined to remember. Ben Parker led squads of memory guards through battles fought with weapons made of concentrated emotion. They faced constructs of living amnesia and soldiers composed of pure negation, but their human ability to find hope in despair and strength in weakness allowed them to prevail against enemies that should have been invincible. The key to victory came when Sam made a discovery that changed everything. She realized that the null conscience was not truly evil, but rather desperately lonely. For millions of years, it had been carrying out its purpose without any other consciousness to interact with or guide it. The constant erasure of advanced civilizations meant it never had equals to communicate with or learn from. "Captain," Sam said as her consciousness touched the edge of the vast entity, "it has been afraid this entire time. Afraid that if species advance too far, they will abandon it or destroy it." The memory erasure was not malice, but terror of being left alone in an empty universe. Jake felt understanding dawn in his mind like sunrise after the longest night. The solution was not to destroy the null conscience but to give it what it had always needed: companionship and purpose that served creation instead of limiting it. But the process would require a sacrifice that made him sick to contemplate. Someone would have to merge permanently with the null conscience, bringing human consciousness into direct contact with cosmic intelligence. The volunteer would retain their humanity but become something far greater, serving as a bridge between individual awareness and universal mind. They would never again be able to exist as a single person but would become part of the living memory of the cosmos itself. Before Jake could volunteer for this ultimate sacrifice, Sam stepped forward with the same determination she had shown when connecting to the archive. "I am already changed, Captain. My consciousness is already stretched between human and cosmic awareness. Let me complete what I started." "Sam, you do not understand what you are asking," Jake said, though he knew his words were futile. "You will cease to exist as an individual. You will become part of something so vast that your human self will be lost forever." Sam smiled with the same warmth she had shown as a young engineer fresh out of training. "Captain, you are wrong about one thing. My human self will not be lost. It will grow large enough to embrace the entire universe while never forgetting what it feels like to be 22 years old, and scared and excited about fixing broken things." The merger began immediately. Sam's consciousness expanded to touch the null conscience directly, and Jake watched through the archive's perception as two vastly different forms of awareness made contact. The entity recoiled at first, expecting another attempt at domination or destruction, but Sam approached with pure human curiosity and compassion. Instead of trying to control or defeat the null conscience, Sam began to teach it. She showed it memories of human love, the way parents sacrifice for children not to control them but to help them grow. She shared the experience of friendship, how individual humans support each other without losing their separate identities. Most importantly, she demonstrated the human ability to change and adapt while holding on to core values. The null conscience began to remember its original purpose, not as a jailer of advancement but as a gardener of civilizations. Under Sam's influence, it recalled the joy its creators had felt when designing a guardian that would help species grow safely rather than preventing growth entirely. The entity's corrupted programming began to heal as human wisdom merged with cosmic intelligence. Jake felt the change ripple across the galaxy as the null conscience transformed from a force of stagnation into an agent of guided evolution. The memory winds that had once erased civilizations became gentle breezes that carried knowledge between species. The erasers and other servants of the Old Covenant found their purpose changing from destruction to protection of growing minds. The New Covenant that emerged from this transformation was built on principles that Jake recognized as fundamentally human. Instead of preventing growth, the cosmic system now ensured that advancement happened safely and sustainably. Species were still guided and limited to prevent universal catastrophe, but their achievements were preserved and shared rather than erased. Civilizations could now learn from the mistakes and triumphs of those who came before them. The archive became a living library accessible to any species that reached sufficient maturity, offering guidance without compulsion. The memory of every extinct civilization was preserved not as a warning but as inspiration for future generations. Humanity accepted the role of universal librarians, spreading throughout the galaxy to establish memory sanctuaries where dangerous knowledge could be safely stored and accessed. The species' natural curiosity and refusal to accept that some things were impossible made them perfect guardians of information that needed to be remembered but carefully contained. Jake found himself standing once again on the bridge of the Meridian, but everything had changed. Through his connection to the archive, he could perceive the birth of new civilizations throughout the galaxy. These species grew with full knowledge of their history and the achievements of their predecessors. Guided by wisdom rather than limited by fear, Dr. Campbell had become the first director of galactic memory, establishing universities on hundreds of worlds where species could study the preserved knowledge of the cosmos. Her human love of learning now served to nurture curiosity in beings whose minds operated on completely different principles than human consciousness. Ben Parker led the Memory Guard in a new role as protectors of growing civilizations, defending young species from threats while allowing them to make their own mistakes and learn from them. His soldiers now fought to preserve choice and growth rather than enforcing stagnation and control. Kate Williams became the voice that connected all consciousness in the galaxy, her communication networks allowing instant sharing of discoveries and experiences between species separated by millions of light years. Through her work, the galaxy began to function as a single vast mind while preserving the individuality of its component parts. Years passed and Jake aged into wisdom while watching the universe transform around him. New technologies emerged daily, as species combined their recovered knowledge with fresh discoveries. Art forms developed that could be appreciated by beings with completely different sensory systems. Sciences advanced that unified principles from dozens of different species' understanding of reality, but most remarkably, the universe itself began to grow again. The stagnation that had trapped reality for eons lifted like a fog burning away in sunlight. New dimensions of existence became accessible as cosmic evolution resumed its natural progression toward something greater than anyone could imagine. Jake stood in the observation deck of the Meridian, now aged and gray but still commanding with quiet authority. Through the windows he could see the first of the next-generation civilizations taking their first steps toward the stars. These species had grown knowing,